Welcome to the Online Business Launchpad podcast. I'm your host, Trudy Rankin. And today I have a guest with me that has been running a business since 2010. He started a business called SalesX. And this business is one that I have a little bit of an interest in because it's basically, if I was going to summarize it, it's a digital ad agency, but he helps companies develop profitable customer acquisition programs and uses a bunch of different ways to do that. It could be search marketing, it could be advertising or display advertising, mobile marketing, analytics, creative services. So there's a big mix of things that he does. But we were talking just before we got started recording this podcast, and he told me about something that I found interesting. And he was telling me about an ad grant that Google has available that I'd never heard of. I didn't realize that it existed. And we were just talking a little bit about what he's doing with his business to make sure that people who run nonprofit businesses have access to that. So I want to just say hello and welcome to Joe Khoei, who is the CEO and founder at SalesX, and just say welcome to the podcast, Joe.
Thank you, Trudy. Hello.
So I'm really interested, especially after we were just chatting earlier. There may be some people who aren't quite sure what a digital ad agency does. The name's obvious, right? But there's a lot of things wrapped into that people might not be aware so much of. And so what I would like you to do is, first of all, if you could just talk a little bit about your journey, who you are, where you're from, and how you started the company, how you started SalesX. But then once you've done that, maybe talk a little bit about what's involved in running an agency like that.
You bet. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, Silicon Valley. I studied engineering and then was doing engineering, and the salespeople were selling stuff that the company didn't have. And then I went over to the salespeople, the sales department, to ask them what they're thinking, and the place was empty. And I said, "Where's everybody?" to the admin there. And she said that they've all hit their quota, so they're in Hawaii at the President's Club. And I said, okay, so they sold something that doesn't exist, like a functionality in the equipment that the equipment doesn't do. I'm stuck with the customer, and they're off in Hawaii surfing. So I went back to school, got my MBA, and got a job as a software sales rep. And I worked in that industry, in the software industry, for 10 years. And then I started SalesX to help companies sell more. That's why it's called SalesX and not Advertising X. But what happened is the first handful of companies that I got all needed good websites. They didn't have, this is back in 2010, they didn't have good websites. So I'm like, okay, I'm an engineer. I'll figure out how to do your website. So I figured out how to do WordPress websites, and I did their websites. Then the websites needed to be optimized for the search engine. So I'm like, okay, I'm an engineer. I could figure that out. So I did that. Figured out how to do their SEO. Then they needed to do paid advertising so that they could come up on top regardless of their level of optimization. So I said, okay, we'll do that. So we ended up pivoting 3 times within the first 12 months. And we went from being a sales consulting company to doing websites, search engine optimization, and paid ads through Google. And eventually we created a lot of automation, became a 5 times US Search Awards winner ad agency with a lot of in-house automation that we have. And we have clients that range from smaller clients to giant clients. So we don't have a lot of clients. We're a boutique agency, so we have about 20 clients altogether, but they range anywhere from a small pain clinic in Minnesota to a national durable medical equipment company, so to speak. So anyway, we also do the thing that you were alluding to about the Google ad grants. Maybe I can take a second and tell you about that. So Google has this program called Google Ad Grants. And if you're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, which isn't in the healthcare, it's not a school, and is not a government entity, those 3 things this doesn't apply to. They have different programs for those. But as long as you're not one of those 3, then you can get this Google grant, which is $10,000 worth of free clicks per month. And what we noticed is that a lot of nonprofits, even though they could use those clicks, they can't afford to pay an agency to manage that account for them, and they can't manage it themselves because it's too hard. And so we thought, let's just do that for them for free. So we started a division called Givingly. I was looking for the URL and I saw that givingly.org is available. I say, okay, that's a good omen, because that's not a URL that you could easily get. But the fact that it was available on that day, I got it and I forwarded it to that kind of Google Ad Grants Management page of our website, SalesX. And so any nonprofit that qualifies, we can help them get the grants, and we could manage that for free at no charge for them. And that's just our way of giving back, so to speak, expressing gratitude for the success that we have, and our way of trying to have a greater influence in the world other than just our immediate selves, our families, and our customers.
Yeah, I find, and that's a really interesting model, and good on Google for doing that. And also it's great that you're willing to work with not-for-profits to basically able to take advantage of that. Curiosity question, you basically gave some criteria that are very much targeted at US companies. Is that grant available to people outside of the US?
It might be. I'm not really sure about that, but it probably is. I can check it out really quick for you. But yeah, probably if people just Google it, Google Ad Grants, and then enter their country, they'll find out. So you're in Australia.
And I know
Yeah.
there's people who listen from all over the world. It could be the UK or New Zealand or Australia or Europe, or there's lots of other places as well. But yeah, and so it's just really interesting. So I'm a little bit interested in terms of, so you've got a boutique agency. I really like that, because it sounds like you've got a particular vision for your business and you want to keep it to a specific size. Do you have what kind of a team do you have? What kind of, so not necessarily numbers, but in terms of the skill sets and the people that you have for your team, are they local? Do they work remote?
Yeah.
All that?
Yeah, they're local. The interesting thing is, as I was starting my business back in 2010, I was in some seminars and the people were saying that the strength of the founders at the early stage becomes their weakness as the later stage. It wasn't until much later that I found out what they mean. So in the beginning, my strength, which is sales, was our strength, because I never had to deal with not having business. I could go out and get business. But then later, we never developed a sales and marketing group. So now we're a team of 13, 14 people, and it's me, my admin, which is part-time, and then everybody else is production engineers. And so what happened is, because we don't have turnover, because we're very KPI driven, so key performance indicators ruled around here. That's how sales is. Like, what have you done for me lately? Our people, we know exactly how all the accounts are doing all the time, and they know what they need to work on all the time. So we don't micromanage them, so they don't leave. So we have this team that's been around with us anywhere from 5 to 9, 10 years. And as these people grow up, they get paid more salary. And so now the money that we would pay sales and marketing people, we're paying our production people. So we get our business through referrals and through thought leadership, through conversations like this. And if somebody reads some of the pieces that we publish on Search Engine Land, the top blog in our industry, or if they look up US Search Awards to see who the winners were, they find us. Or they can also find us on the Google Partner Directory, which is, we're the premier partner, so it's top 3%, that kind of stuff. But yeah, so to answer your question, most of my people, they're basically technical people. They manage ad accounts, and they manage the software that we have to help keep those accounts optimized all the time. And they're also relationship managers. They manage the reporting, the conversations with the clients, the ongoing back and forth project management work required to run successful accounts.
Yeah, it sounds like they have interesting work that's varied enough to keep them occupied and their brains occupied. I have a sort of a follow-up question to that, and I'm going to put my senior manager, chief information officer hat on from my days in big organizations. And one of the things that I felt was important, and I still believe it is important, is in order to keep employees, for example, you've kept yours for a long time. What do you do to be able to give them a development pathway? Do they have development pathways? They might start out here and then over the years realize they'd like to be doing this or that or the other thing. Do you have a deliberate policy of team development? And if so, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, actually, the field that we're in, as always, there's not a dull moment because it's every week, every month, it's yet another thing. So there's always interesting stuff that you could get into, and you could dive 20 miles deep into Google Ads just because it is truly, that's what's funding Google, the giant that Google is. All the revenues, majority of the revenues, over 90% is coming from the Google Ads platform. It's extremely sophisticated and things are always changing. New things are coming up. New betas are being developed and rolled out. Things are being phased out. So the team is always staying interested, but the development path, we get the interns and it takes them during the internship program, they figure out whether they can even hack this type of work or not. And then if they like it, then they start using tools that we provide to them to start assisting the account managers doing some of this stuff. Like we do, part of the success in Google Ads and in any online environment is that you have to always run tests for creating additional kind of conversions. Whether it's converting a visitor to click on your link, click on your site, or once they're in your site, whether it's converting them to become a client, or whether it's converting them to subscribe, or whether it's converting them to download something, or buy something, or call, or fill out a form. Those are all conversion paths. So you have to have ongoing conversion optimization. And part of that ongoing conversion optimization is on the ad side. So the ads, they have to be split tested all the time. You cannot have just one ad, or you cannot have 20 ads. You have to have 2 ads, always test them and see which one's winning, which one's losing, and then promote the winner, get rid of the loser, and then put another challenger on. And you have to run that 24/7, 365. And we have thousands upon thousands of ads. So I think the last time I checked, it was something like 8,000-9,000 live ads are running. And so these interns, they go from learning a little bit about it to then using the tools for these split tests and doing some of that work. Of course, we have automation and stuff like that. But then from internship, if they do that and they can start working effectively as a junior account manager, then they can become account managers and then account directors after that. And then on the other side is the relationship manager. We have relationship managers for the smaller accounts whose spend is relatively small, maybe $10,000 or under $10,000 a month. And then we have a mid-tier accounts that are spending between 10,000 and like 80,000. And then we have the top tier accounts that are spending from 80,000 to 300,000, $400,000 or $500,000 a month. And so depending on which tier you're managing, you have to be more experienced and wiser, longer on the job, more educated, all of that. So there's incentive for you to up your game as the stakes go up on the account level.
To me, that's really interesting because it does mean that there's a growth path. People can see that there's a growth path. And if that's what they're interested in, they can follow it. But I have to say it's really interesting because the skill set that you need at the junior level, it can be quite different to what you need when you hit the relationship manager side of things, where it's people to people instead of people to technology and things like that. Obviously they get like hands-on experience, but do you also help them with mentoring, coaching, provide courses for them, or how do you help them make that shift from the focus on the tech to the focus on the relationship?
Yeah, excellent question. Typically, people don't jump from one to the other. Typically, they're
Ah,
either going down one path or the other. However, there is a website called Lynda. I think they were bought by LinkedIn, but
yeah, they were.
Lynda. And I
Yeah.
remember when I first started SalesX, people would be like, I need this, and I'd go on Lynda and I'd learn how to do it. You take the course, the video course, and then at the end, back then, you could print the certificate of the course completion. And I remember when I first started back in 2010, I had this like small office, 10 by 10, and it was just a desk and two chairs on the other side. And then there was like a little table on the far side, a return. And when people sat at those chairs on the other side of the desk, there was a wall to their left, which was just an empty wall. And I had printed all these, I'd done color printing of all these certificates, and I had it from top to bottom. It was like 5 wide and 15 deep. And I had all these certificates there. So from all the courses that I had taken and completed. So when they sat there, they would be like, oh, wow. Okay, they were looking on their left, but we're like, oh, okay, great. You've taken 8 courses on search engine optimization. You've done 10 courses on website development, this and that. Probably learned something after all that.
Yeah, that's such a good way to go. And you still have to combine what you learn in the course with the hands-on stuff, because you learn more by doing sometimes than you do by studying, but the studying is necessary to get the theory and stuff. I have one last quick question about the team side of things, and I'd like to just get into, I have some questions about the automation side, but I've always had a bit of a soft spot in my heart for interns and internship programs. And I've always tried wherever I've been to have interns or put in place an internship program. Was that focus on bringing interns into your business, was that a deliberate move on your part? Is it something that happened organically? How did you go about actually setting up your internship program?
So I got invited to be part of the marketing advisory board for a local university. And it was Menlo University. It's next door to Stanford. It's a private business school. And I said, okay, great. And I was at this advisory board that had the job fair thing going on. So I was standing there. And this gal came up to me and she said, yeah, do you have any opportunities for internship, this and that? And I said, what's your story? And she said, oh, I'm the first person out of my family that's ever been college educated. She was from a Hispanic background. And I said, where are you right now in your education? She said, I'm in my senior year. I'll be graduating this year in like 6 months, whatever it is. I'm looking for an internship. And I said, where do you work right now? She said, oh, I'm working and going to school. I said, where do you work? She said, I'm a hostess at, I think it was like Tacolicious or something, some taco Spanish. And I'm like, all right, you don't need to do that. You can come over and be an intern. So I brought her on. And within I would say not even a year, she took over the job of the person that she came on to assist because he just wasn't doing the job. And I had a meeting with both of them in place. And the guy was like giving all these excuses. And she's like, no, we could take care of it. We could do it all. And I'm like, really, Thierry, you could do that? Yeah. Okay. So she ended up becoming one of the managers at SalesX. And then from there, she brought more people from Menlo as interns, her former classmates. And some of those people are still with us today. In fact, all the ones that she brought in are still with us today. And so it's an organic thing. We didn't intend to have a formal internship. It's just kind of like show up at the university. And then if you see somebody that you think is talented, just give them a chance.
I think that's an important attitude or approach to things, because if we give people a chance, if we genuinely give them a chance and give them the support they need, 9 times out of 10, they'll just amaze us with what they can do. I just think a lot of small businesses don't think about having an internship or interns. They think, oh, I can't afford to have somebody come in, or I don't have time to put together the onboarding process, or I don't have time to manage them and stuff. But the rewards you get from doing that, bringing people in, giving them a chance. It's wow. Think of all, I'm just thinking of all the money you save from having to recruit people because you've got somebody else helping you bring people in and they know them, so they know whether they're good or not. So that's kudos to you for basically taking that approach. And I would like to encourage listeners who are thinking about maybe bringing somebody in on an internship program. Yeah, there's lots of universities around who do run them, and they're always looking for people to partner with, where so that you can give somebody else a chance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the beauty of doing it that way versus actually recruiting people is that when you put a job post, first of all, you get a bajillion resumes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then might be extremely talented as an intern, like new, fresh, but their resume might not look so good. They might have a space before a comma, and then you're like, oh, they don't pay attention to detail. And then you automatically just nuke the resume without thinking about the person, just because they had maybe a typo on the resume or the formatting wasn't as well as you would like. Or somebody might have a beautiful resume and you get them for the interview and they might have an amazing sales face for the interview, but they turn out to misrepresent themselves because they're like putting on this mask. When you're in an environment where you're at a job, at a recruiting, like at a college environment, the kids are coming in, they got their backpack on, they're not putting their sales face on, they're just being themselves. And you can observe a lot of stuff that you can't observe from a resume and in a formal interview environment. They might be shy, right? Might not interview well, but when they're in their environment and they're just checking something out casually, they have nothing to win, nothing to lose, then their personality truly comes through. And you could see stuff that you would never get in a formal interview situation, or it doesn't come through from a resume. So that human face-to-face connection does bring a certain level of value that you wouldn't otherwise realize.
Yes. And I don't know about you, but I certainly found it really satisfying to be able to observe people doing that in that environment and being able to spot potential that's in those people that they don't even realize is there because they don't know enough about the job or the market or the industry to realize that they could maybe do those things. And so to be able to help then bring that talent to the surface and bring it to life it's just really rewarding as a boss and as a manager. At least it is for me. I don't know, but
yeah, I've had friends that, like, I had this friend that basically spent all her time on Facebook, just like coffee and Facebook, espresso, Facebook. That's all. She spent a lot of time, and she was like, she got a job at a restaurant, didn't like it, being a waitress, this and that. And I said to her, we have clients that need Facebook, and one of them is asking for us to audit their Facebook account. Why don't you go learn about Facebook's back end and their advertising platform? And find your friends that know about that, find some contacts, some gurus, and just dig into, you're on Facebook all the time anyway, just go to the back end of it and see if you can audit this account. Here's an account from SalesX. That person started with us like 3 years ago as basically a Facebook intern. And over the past 3 years, she's tripled her salary, right? And she was making basically rock bottom minimum money because she wasn't doing anything, right? She was basically a restaurant worker. But we put her on a program where she gets a small base, but also she gets a percentage of the money that we charge the client. And because now she's in control of her own wage, she just figures out all these trick stuff about how to really make Facebook pop. And she's been like, literally last month, the 20% of the spend that we managed was under Facebook, under her. And this is a person that was like unsatisfied with her restaurant job and just basically drinking espressos and looking at Facebook all day. So giving people a chance, recognizing talents, and maybe they don't know it about themselves. You're like, look, if you can be on Facebook that long, you could probably figure out the back end of it too. Like, if you can spend 8 hours a day on Facebook, make some money.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. That is a great story. I really like that story. I want to talk a little bit about something that you've mentioned before, and it's something that I think that more businesses should be paying attention to. And that is that you've mentioned automation as part of what your team does. And my guess is, knowing what I know, my guess is that the only reason that you can have such a small team is because you've got automation. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you got into that process of automating things? What role does it play in your business? And could you live?
Yeah, so we got a little bit lucky. Again, that also came from this role that I took, the volunteer role that I took as a marketing advisory board member at Menlo University. One of the people there was VP at Google. And at the time we carved out that division and sold it since then. But at the time we had this division where we serviced home care agencies that were part of a franchise. So I had met one of them and she really liked what we did for her. And she introduced me to her other franchise owners. So we had 4 of them. And then we called the franchisor and they're like, yeah, you could go and do to the California meeting of the California franchisees. Went to that and all of a sudden we had 30 of these franchise accounts. And to go and they were all doing the exact same thing, but at different geographies. This person had these 10 towns, this person had the next 10 towns, and so on, all over California. So I needed some sort of an automation because I couldn't ask my people to spend so much time going to 30 accounts doing the same exact thing 30 times over. That made no sense. So I talked to this guy and he said, yeah, there's this guy, he's the Google AdWords evangelist. At the time it was called AdWords. So he's the one and only Google AdWords evangelist who was one of the first 500 people that started at Google. He spent 10 years there and he quit a couple of years ago and he has his own agency, but he does the automation. He's one of a handful of people in the world that does this Google automation stuff called Google Ad Scripts. So we hired this fellow. And I remember I was charging my client, that original client, I was charging her $300 a month to manage her account. And I was paying him $3,000 a month to help me bring automation to that account. So I was like negative by $2,700. And I paid him for 4 months. But then that automation, we started applying it to all of those accounts. And then later, Frederick, he was like, you have employees, they're showing up to work every day. I have all these accounts and I'm using contractors, and the contractors, they don't necessarily prioritize me. Why don't I give you all those accounts and you can manage them for me and I'll pay you. So we ended up taking Frederick's accounts, and then eventually we ended up actually buying his agency and making him our CTO. And so there's a little bit of, you do good by volunteering your time, and then that human connection can pay off like that. Where if you're sitting and isolating yourself and being greedy with your time, then you miss out on those types of opportunities as well. I think anybody that's starting a new business, the famous one-liner is, if you're not networking, you're not working. So I think anybody that's starting a business, they're definitely doing a lot of networking. I was doing networking every week without miss, 52 weeks a year at 7 a.m. at this networking group that had 60 people in it for the first 5 years. After that, we kind of outgrew the types of referrals we were getting from them because our prices were outside of those ranges. But for the first 5 years, literally, I was every single Thursday at 7 a.m. I was at this networking event without miss.
It's an important thing that I think a lot of small business owners, especially ones who would consider themselves an introvert, tend to think networking, I don't think I can do that. I don't know how to do it. I don't feel comfortable doing it. So maybe just as we finish up, maybe you could just give just a couple of tips from your perspective about just doing that type of networking. What was your approach? How did you talk to people? What did you do that made it feel okay for you to do?
There are certain networking environments that are very structured. So you're not thrown to the wolves where you have to depend on your wits. You can be completely introverted and then you go in and you follow the structure. The one that I was in, I didn't necessarily need that level of structure, but it didn't hurt. Was called BNI, Business Network International. And BNI is a global organization. And they're still around, they're still doing it. They've been around since '83. And they're very structured. They only have one person representing each type of business. So you got one digital agency, one real estate, one plumber, one electrician, one construction guy. And so you're not competing with other people within the group. And then everybody has to do like a 30-second pitch. And then once every couple of, whenever the rotation happens, you might do a 10-minute presentation. And then you have breakout groups. And you're encouraged to meet with people outside of, so it's very structured. And then all of that work is graded, where your participation is, you're saying, okay, I gave this many referrals that caused this much revenue exchange. And you're like, oh, okay, I feel great about. So it's very structured. It doesn't matter if you're an introvert, you follow the structure. It's one foot in front of the other, right? You don't need to be a hiker. You could just put one foot in front of the other, and next thing you know, you've hiked 5 miles. It's fine. No problem. So that's that. In terms of your people, one of the things that I've been telling people for the past 13 years, because you hear about this search engine optimization, the SEO thing, you hear about it a lot. And it's mostly all gimmicks and fraudulent stuff. But the thing about SEO, that it's a nice hidden secret about SEO, is that Google actually has a published guideline for SEO. It's called the Google Search Engine Optimization Starter Guide. So over the years, because I've said that so many times to people, I actually got the acronym as a URL, gseosg.com, and I forwarded to that page on Google's website. So when I'm talking, when people are like, do you do SEO service? I'm like, yeah, we do that work. You can do it yourself, and here's where you find it. So if your people want to have a website that's found on the web, they could just follow that guide. It's a 30-page PDF. It's 10 main things, and each main thing has 10 examples. So anybody could basically, if you can read it, probably figure it out. Some people, they're not techie, so it's not conducive for everyone. Yet a lot of people, they can at least be educated about what it's going to take to show up in the Google search results, because that information is public, and all this hoopla about SEO is mostly fraudulent. You don't need to fall for it. The dirty little secret, though, is that it's a lot of work. So that's why if you're going to hire an SEO agency, for example, then you need to have that GSEO in front of you and say, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And have those top 10 things. And if they're not doing it, they're not doing it. It's over.
And that's really important, because as a business owner, you might want to just go, I don't want to know about SEO, but I know I have to do it. You can't afford to do that as a business owner. You have to actually know enough to know if you're having the wool pulled over your eyes. And that's a really good tip. But we'll put the link to that in the show notes so that the listeners can just go and find it and look it up. Yeah, Joe, that's been really helpful. You've shared a lot with us today, and I really appreciate it. And if people were interested in either knowing more about you or getting in touch with you, or maybe even if they're interested in just checking out what SalesX can do for them, where would they go?
So my email is joe@salesx.com, and our domain is just the word sales and the letter X. So salesx.com. And if someone's struggling with Google Ads, we're happy to do a free audit for them and provide a presentation which serves as a business plan for their Google Ads account, free of charge. And they could either go do it themselves, or they could have us do it, or they could give it to their current agency and say, do these things. And that's just a value add that we provide. And then if they want SEO service, they should educate themselves about Google Search Engine Optimization Starter Guide document. The thing is that you don't have to go and try and figure things out. It's already written by Google itself. Google is, here's what it is. It's basically, they've chewed the food, they've put it in your mouth. All you have to do is just say, thank you. So that's it. And then if it's a 501c3 nonprofit in the US, and you can look around the globe as well, but I know for sure in the US, then our givingly.org department, Givingly will service that for free. We'll help you get the Google grant and we'll manage it for free, just for the sake of doing good.
That is an amazing offer. So, Joe, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And it's just been great.
Thank you so much, Rudy. It's been great to be in here.
So everyone, I hope you enjoyed that. That was Joe Khoei, who's the CEO and founder of SalesX at salesx.com. And I hope you have a great